The old oak tree had always been part of the town. Its branches stretched wide, casting long shadows over the grassy area beside the river. Children would run around it, pretending the hollow trunk was a castle or a cave where treasures were hidden. Parents would sit on benches nearby, keeping an eye on their little ones while enjoying the calmness the tree brought. It was a familiar sight, one that had been there for as long as anyone could remember, and it was loved quietly by everyone who lived near it. Eli had grown up hearing stories about the tree. He remembered his grandmother telling him that long ago, the tree had been a meeting place for townsfolk during festivals. Sometimes, she said, people would hide small items in the hollow trunk, leaving them there as tokens or secrets. As a child, Eli had imagined all kinds of adventures tied to the tree, but now, as a young man, he was curious in a more practical way. He wanted to know if any of the stories were true. One bright afternoon, Eli wandered to the tree carrying a small flashlight in his backpack. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating patches of gold and green on the ground. The river beside the tree sparkled, and the air was filled with the soft hum of insects. Eli felt calm and excited at the same time. There was something about exploring that gave him a sense of adventure, a feeling that maybe today he would find something remarkable. As he approached the tree, he crouched down near the hollow. The opening was just big enough for his hand to fit inside, and he could see a dark space within. He reached in slowly, careful not to disturb anything that might be fragile. His fingers brushed against leaves and dirt at first, but then he felt something solid. His heart skipped a beat. It was a box, old and small, tucked away at the back of the hollow. The wood was worn and the rusty hinges suggested it had been there for a long time. Curiosity surged through him and he gently pulled it out. The box was heavier than it looked. Eli set it down on the grass, brushing off the dirt and examining it closely. The carvings on the top were intricate but faded, patterns that seemed familiar yet hard to place. There was a sense of mystery about it, as if it held stories that no one had heard in decades. Eli's mind raced with possibilities. Could it be a forgotten treasure? Or maybe just an old keepsake someone had hidden and never returned for? The questions seemed endless, and the excitement in his chest grew. He carried the box a short distance to a bench, where he could sit and inspect it more carefully. The metal hinges creaked as he tried to open it, and a small cloud of dust rose from the seams. Inside, he found a few objects: a bundle of letters tied with a thin ribbon, some black and white photographs, and a small key that glinted in the sunlight. Each item seemed ordinary at first glance, but the way they had been preserved made them feel important. Eli could sense that they were not just random items left behind. They had a story to tell. The letters were delicate, the paper thin and yellowed with age. The handwriting was elegant, looping and precise, though faded. Eli could make out some words, phrases about promises and plans, names of people he had never heard of. The photographs showed men and women in old-fashioned clothing, standing in front of buildings that were unfamiliar. Yet some seemed like places he might have passed by without knowing their history. There were even a few pictures that included the tree itself, though it looked smaller then, younger and less grand. Eli's curiosity grew stronger by the minute. He knew he had found something special, something that might change the way people saw the town. He called a couple of neighbors over, friends who shared his interest in history and mysteries. When they gathered around, the sense of excitement spread. Everyone leaned in to look at the box and its contents, whispering guesses and theories about where it had come from and why it had been hidden. Rumors started to swirl quickly. Some thought it might be a long-lost treasure belonging to a wealthy family from the town's past. Others suggested it could be evidence of some old disagreement or secret that... The next morning, Eli returned to the tree, the mysterious box carefully tucked in his backpack. The sun had barely risen, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. The town was quiet, with only birds singing and the gentle rustle of leaves. Eli set the box on a wooden bench nearby, eager to take a closer look at the letters, photographs, and the small key that had caught everyone's attention the day before. He untied the ribbon around the letters, taking care not to tear the fragile paper. Each letter was delicate, almost crumbling at the edges. The handwriting was elegant, full of loops and swirls, showing the care of someone who had spent a long time crafting each word. As he began to read, he noticed that the letters were not ordinary correspondence. They spoke of promises kept and broken, of secrets that had been hidden from the town for decades, and of events that seemed almost impossible to believe. One letter mentioned a gathering near the river, with names that sounded familiar yet distant. Another letter described an important decision made by someone in the past, one that had affected the lives of many families in the town. The words painted vivid pictures of moments long gone, people dressed in clothing from a bygone era, laughing, arguing, and making choices that had ripple effects far into the future. Eli felt like he was peering into a hidden world, one that had been carefully preserved within this small, forgotten box. The photographs were equally fascinating. Eli carefully spread them out on the bench. Black and white faces stared back at him, serious and smiling, capturing moments of life that no one in the town had remembered. Some showed children playing near the very tree where the box had been hidden. Others showed adults in formal attire, standing proudly or posing awkwardly for the camera. The more Eli looked, the more he noticed details that seemed connected to the town's present. Streets, houses, and landmarks that still existed appeared in the background, linking the past to the present in ways that made him shiver. The small key was the most puzzling of all. It was old but sturdy, and its shape did not match any lock Eli had seen. He turned it over in his hands, feeling the weight of history it carried. The letters hinted that the key opened something important, a place that had been hidden or forgotten. Eli couldn't imagine what it could unlock, but he knew it was connected to the story the letters and photographs were telling. The thought of discovering a hidden room or chest somewhere in town filled him with anticipation. Eli's curiosity grew stronger by the hour. He called over a couple of neighbors, friends who shared his fascination with history and mystery. They gathered around the bench, whispering in excitement as Eli showed them the letters and photographs. Everyone was eager to understand what the box meant and why it had been hidden. The town felt alive with the thrill of discovery, as if the past was reaching out to the present through this simple, weathered box. The neighbors speculated endlessly. Some believed the letters contained clues to a hidden treasure, or valuable family heirlooms. Others thought it might be evidence of a long-forgotten disagreement, a scandal that the original townsfolk had wanted to keep secret. Every idea seemed possible, and the townspeople began to discuss the box in hushed tones whenever they met. The old tree, once a quiet landmark, had become the center of attention, its hollow trunk now a symbol of mystery and wonder. As word spread, more people came to see the box. Children who had always played near the tree were now fascinated, imagining what it must have been like when the box was first hidden. Older townsfolk shared stories of their grandparents and great-grandparents, trying to piece together the history that the letters and photographs hinted at. Everyone felt a sense of connection to the past, as if the town itself had become a living storybook. Eli spent hours reading the letters, trying to make sense of the names, events, and places mentioned. Some passages were confusing, written in ways that were difficult to understand. Others were clear, revealing acts of kindness and courage that had been forgotten. One letter described someone helping Eli realize that the letters, photographs, and key were just the beginning. The deeper he read into the letters, the more he understood that they were not merely personal messages. They were clues. Each word hinted at hidden events, forgotten locations, and people whose actions had shaped the town in ways that no one alive remembered. The excitement was hard to contain, and he knew he could not solve this alone. He needed help from someone who understood the town's history better than he did. Mrs. Cartwright, the local historian, was the first person Eli thought of. She had spent decades studying the town, preserving old records and uncovering stories from the past. Her knowledge was unparalleled, and she had a keen eye for details that most people overlooked. Eli brought the box to her small office, which was lined with shelves of books, old photographs, and town maps. When Mrs. Cartwright saw the contents, her eyes widened in surprise and curiosity. She carefully examined the photographs first. The people in the images were familiar to her from old records, though most had been forgotten by the current generation. She recognized some of the old houses, streets, and businesses that had either changed or disappeared over the years. Mrs. Cartwright explained that the letters seemed to describe events from a time when the town was very different, more connected and intimate, yet full of conflicts and secrets that had never been shared publicly. Eli listened intently, absorbing every detail she revealed. The letters fascinated Mrs. Cartwright as much as they did Eli. She read aloud passages that described meetings, agreements and disagreements between families, along with hints of disputes over land, inheritance, and personal promises. There were references to places that still existed, though in altered form, and mentions of objects or rooms that had long been forgotten. Each clue seemed like a breadcrumb left for someone to find, someone curious enough to piece together the story. It was clear to both of them that the box had not been hidden by accident. It had been deliberately placed to preserve history. One of the letters mentioned a room that held important documents, a room that had been hidden for years. Eli's heart raced as Mrs. Cartwright speculated about its location. Could it be in one of the old houses still standing, or perhaps in a building that had since been remodeled? The town had grown and changed over the decades, and many structures from that era had been altered or forgotten. The small key, which had seemed mysterious before, now felt like a tangible connection to that hidden room. Eli turned it over in his hand, imagining what might lie behind a locked door waiting to be discovered. Mrs. Cartwright suggested they start with a careful examination of the town's oldest buildings. They made a plan to visit each site, looking for clues that matched the descriptions in the letters. The search would take time, patience, and attention to detail. It was not a simple treasure hunt. It was a journey into history, one that demanded respect and thoughtfulness. Eli felt the weight of responsibility, but also a thrill at the possibilities ahead. As they began their investigation, they found that some of the letters referred to events that had impacted the town in subtle but lasting ways. Disputes over land had shaped streets and property boundaries. Secret acts of kindness had influenced families quietly. The more they uncovered, the more they realized that the past was alive in the present, woven into the town's very fabric. It was a revelation that fascinated the townspeople once Eli and Mrs. Cartwright shared their progress. Word of the investigation spread quickly. Neighbors offered stories they had heard from grandparents, shared old maps, or pointed out buildings that might have been part of the letter's references. The town felt alive with curiosity and anticipation, as if the box in the old tree had awakened a shared desire to know more. Every visit, every discovery brought new excitement, and each piece of history they uncovered deepened the connection between past and present. Eli and Mrs. Cartwright discovered several hidden features in old buildings: loose floorboards, small compartments in walls, and forgotten drawers in attics. Each discovery hinted at the possibility of uncovering more, and the anticipation grew with each finding. The town's history, once buried in memory and faded documents, began to emerge vividly. People were eager to help, offering assistance, stories, and guidance. It was as if the community had been waiting for this moment, ready to engage with a history that belonged to them all. The letters also revealed personal stories that were touching and human. Acts of bravery, generosity, and compassion were hidden among tales of disagreement and tension. One letter spoke of a family helping a neighbor in secret during hard times, leaving supplies and notes of encouragement without revealing their identity. Another told of a person quietly resolving a conflict that could have torn families apart. These stories reminded Eli and the townspeople that history was not just about buildings and documents. It was about the people who lived, struggled, and loved within those walls. The photographs complemented these stories, providing faces to the names and giving life to the letters. Eli studied the expressions, the clothing, and the surroundings. He tried to imagine the personalities behind each face, the hopes and fears they carried, and the choices they had made. The images were a bridge to the past, making the letters' words even more powerful and real. As days turned into weeks, the search for the hidden room intensified. Every building they explored, every compartment they opened, revealed small pieces of the town's history. Some discoveries were mundane but still valuable: old ledgers, forgotten furniture, and letters from other residents. Others were more significant, showing patterns of behavior, social connections, and stories of the town that had long been overlooked. The key still remained to days past, with Eli and Mrs. Cartwright exploring old buildings, searching for the hidden room mentioned in the letters. Each day brought new discoveries: small compartments in floors, loose bricks in walls, and forgotten drawers in attics. Some led to nothing more than old newspapers or dusty belongings, but others gave hints that they were on the right track. Each clue deepened the mystery and built anticipation for what might lie ahead. One afternoon, while examining an old house that had belonged to one of the town's founding families, Eli noticed a subtle outline in the wooden floor near the fireplace. It was easy to miss, but something about the grain of the wood seemed unusual. He called Mrs. Cartwright over, and together they carefully pried up the floorboard. Beneath it was a small door, hidden from sight for decades. Eli's hands shook as he held the key, which fit perfectly into the lock. With a gentle turn, the door creaked open, revealing a narrow, dimly lit room. Inside, the room was small but filled with remarkable objects. Stacks of documents, old letters, photographs, and boxes lined the walls. Dust covered everything, but the items were surprisingly well preserved. It was clear that someone had taken great care to protect these belongings, hiding them in a place where only the most persistent and curious person could find them. Eli and Mrs. Cartwright stepped inside, marveling at the treasure trove of history that lay before them. They began carefully examining the contents. The documents included deeds, journals, and letters that detailed the town's earliest days. Some described disputes over land and inheritance, while others told stories of neighbors helping one another during difficult times. The photographs captured moments of everyday life, celebrations, and quiet acts of kindness that had gone unnoticed. Each item added depth to the story, revealing the lives, struggles, and triumphs of people who had shaped the town. As they worked, Eli realized the importance of preserving these artifacts. This hidden room was not just a storage space. It was a time capsule, holding the town's history in a tangible, personal way. The items reflected the human experiences that letters and photographs alone could not convey. Every note, every document told a story of choices, relationships, and actions that had lasting impacts on the town. The room was a bridge to the past, offering insights that had been lost over the years. News of the discovery spread quickly. Townspeople came to see the hidden room and the objects inside. Children were fascinated by the idea of secret doors and hidden rooms, while adults shared stories of relatives and ancestors who might have contributed to the collection. The excitement was palpable, and the town felt closer as people gathered to learn about their shared history. The old tree where it all began had become a symbol of curiosity and discovery, connecting the past and present in a way that no one had expected. As Eli and Mrs. Cartwright continued exploring the room, they found letters that detailed conflicts and resolutions within families. One letter described a dispute over land that had divided neighbors for years, while another recounted an act of quiet generosity that had helped a struggling family survive. These letters revealed the complexities of human nature, the mix of selfishness, kindness, courage, and vulnerability that shaped the town. Eli felt a deep sense of respect for the people who had lived before, recognizing that their decisions, both small and large, had left a mark on the community. The photographs added another layer of understanding. Eli examined the faces, the clothing, and the surroundings, imagining the lives of the people captured in the images. Some photographs showed the old tree itself, smaller and younger than it was now, yet already standing as a silent witness to the town's history. The images brought the letters to life, providing context and a sense of connection that made the past feel immediate and real. The discovery of the hidden room had transformed the town. Eli and Mrs. Cartwright had spent weeks cataloging and preserving the documents, letters, photographs, and objects that had been stored there for decades. The room had become a focal point for the community, drawing people in with stories of the past and the promise of learning more about the lives of those who had come before them. The old tree, under whose shade the adventure had begun, now stood as a symbol of history, mystery, and connection. Eli felt a mixture of pride and responsibility as he walked through the town, watching neighbors discuss the discoveries. Children excitedly pointed out details in the photographs, while adults shared memories and speculated about the events described in the letters. The town had come alive with curiosity, and the sense of community had grown stronger. People were talking, laughing, and learning together, united by the hidden stories that had been uncovered. The artifacts revealed lessons that went beyond history. Letters described acts of kindness, generosity, and courage that had shaped the town quietly. Some stories spoke of neighbors helping one another in secret, leaving gifts or notes of encouragement without recognition. Others told of conflicts and disagreements that had influenced decisions and relationships for years. Each story carried a human lesson, reminding everyone that the past was made up of ordinary people making choices that had lasting effects. One of the most striking discoveries was a set of letters between two families who had been rivals for decades. The letters revealed misunderstandings that had caused tension, but they also showed efforts to reconcile and support one another quietly. The townspeople were surprised to learn how much of their community's history had been shaped by these hidden interactions. The stories reminded everyone that history was not just about dates and events, but about people, relationships, and the impact of their actions. Eli worked with Mrs. Cartwright to organize the artifacts into a small museum that could be shared with everyone in the town. They carefully labeled each item, providing context and explanations for the letters, photographs, and objects. The museum became a place of learning and reflection, where people could explore the town's history and appreciate the lives of those who had lived before them. It was a space that encouraged curiosity, understanding, and connection. The old tree continued to be a gathering place. Families came to sit under its branches, reflecting on the discoveries and imagining the past. Children played near its trunk, pretending to hide treasures and secrets of their own. The tree had become a living reminder that ordinary places could hold extraordinary stories, and that the past was always connected to the present in meaningful ways. As more people visited the museum, stories continued to emerge. Older residents shared memories and insights that added depth to the letters and photographs. Younger generations asked questions, eager to understand the people and events that had shaped the town. The museum and the old tree together created a space where history was not just observed, but experienced, connecting generations and creating a sense of shared identity. Eli felt a sense of fulfillment as he watched the town embrace its history. The journey had started with a simple act of curiosity, a glance into the hollow of an old tree, but it had grown into something much larger. The town had rediscovered its roots, learned from the past, and celebrated the lives of people who had come before. The adventure had shown that history was alive, full of surprises and capable of bringing people together in unexpected ways. The small key, which had unlocked the hidden room, was placed on display as part of the museum. It symbolized curiosity, persistence, and the power of discovery. Visitors marveled at how such a simple object had led to the uncovering of stories that had been forgotten for decades. The key reminded everyone that even the smallest actions, like Eli reaching into the hollow tree, could uncover remarkable secrets and create lasting impact. Over time, the town began to celebrate the discovery with an annual event. Families, neighbors, and visitors gathered to share stories, explore the museum, and honor the past. The old tree remained central to the celebration, its presence a constant reminder of the journey that had begun beneath its branches. The town had not only preserved history, but had also strengthened its sense of community, learning to value the stories of ordinary people and the lessons they carried. Eli reflected on the entire experience, realizing that the true value of the discovery was not just in the artifacts themselves, but in the connections they had inspired. People were talking to one another, sharing memories and understanding their shared history in ways they had never done before. The past had become a bridge, linking generations, teaching lessons and inspiring curiosity. The town had grown, richer not in material wealth, but in understanding, empathy, and connection. The old tree, once just a familiar landmark, had transformed into a symbol of discovery, history, and community. Eli understood that the adventure had started with curiosity, but it had become much more, a journey of connection, learning, and appreciation for the lives and choices of those who had come before. The town had been reminded that history was not something distant or abstract. It was alive in every street, every building, and every person who walked among them. In the years that followed, the museum expanded, and more stories were uncovered. Families contributed heirlooms, photographs, and letters, adding to the collection and enriching the town's understanding of its past. The old tree continued to stand as a guardian of memories, a place where children played, neighbors gathered, and history came alive. Eli, watching all of this, felt proud and humbled, knowing that a simple act of curiosity had led to something so profound. The town had changed in ways no one could have predicted. People were more connected, more aware of the past, and more appreciative of the present. They understood that every person, every choice, and every story mattered. The old tree, the box, the letters, photographs, and key had sparked a journey that revealed not just history, but the heart of the community itself. And through it all, Eli realized that the greatest discoveries were not only about objects or documents, but about the way they could inspire people to connect, learn, and grow together. Among the artifacts, Eli and Mrs. Cartwright discovered objects that had personal significance: jewelry, small trinkets, and keepsakes carefully stored. These items offered glimpses into the private lives of the town's residents, reflecting love, loss, and memories that had been preserved through generations. The collection was a reminder that history was not only about events and dates but about people, their emotions, and the choices they made. Every object told a story, and every story added to the rich tapestry of the town's past. As they documented and cataloged the items, Eli felt a growing sense of responsibility. The discovery was a gift, a chance to preserve and share the town's history with future generations. He and Mrs. Cartwright decided to carefully clean, organize, and protect each artifact, ensuring that the stories contained within them would not be lost again. The hidden room had revealed its secrets, but it was up to them and the community to honor and maintain the legacy it held. The town continued to buzz with excitement. People visited the old tree, now aware of its significance, and followed updates on the discoveries in the hidden room. The sense of community strengthened as neighbors shared memories, contributed information, and worked together to understand their shared history. The hidden room had become a focal point, not just for historical research, but for connecting people, inspiring curiosity, and celebrating the town's heritage. Eli reflected on how the adventure had begun with a simple act of curiosity. The hollow in the old tree, the mysterious box, and the small key had led to a hidden room filled with stories and objects that enriched the town's understanding of itself. The journey had been filled with patience, discovery, and the thrill of uncovering something meaningful. Eli felt proud to have been part of it, grateful for the guidance of Mrs. Cartwright, and inspired by the town's willingness to embrace the past. As evening approached, Eli stood outside the old house, looking at the tree in the distance. Its branches swayed gently, as if acknowledging the uncovering of the hidden room and the stories it contained. He felt a sense of peace, knowing that the town's history was now being preserved and shared. The adventure had transformed the tree from a familiar landmark into a symbol of curiosity, discovery, and connection, reminding everyone that ordinary places could hide extraordinary secrets waiting to be found. History, but it felt closer to fulfilling its purpose. With each step of the investigation, the town began to gather at the old oak tree more frequently, watching Eli and Mrs. Cartwright as they worked. Children were fascinated by the idea of hidden compartments and secret rooms, while adults debated theories and shared memories. The tree had become a focal point, not just for its history but for the sense of community and curiosity it inspired. People were reminded that ordinary places could hide extraordinary stories, and that understanding the past could bring them closer together. Eli felt a deep sense of satisfaction and responsibility. He knew that the journey they were on was more than a simple search for treasure. It was a way to honor the people who had come before, to preserve their stories, and to connect the town with its history in a meaningful way. Every clue, every discovery, added to a larger narrative that was slowly coming into focus, revealing the town's hidden past in ways that were both surprising and enlightening. By the end of the week, Eli and Mrs. Cartwright had gathered enough information to form a clearer picture of the town's history. They had identified potential locations for the hidden room and understood the significance of the key. The town was buzzing with anticipation, and Eli could feel the weight of what was about to be revealed. The mystery of the old tree, the box, and the letters had grown into a larger story, one that promised to reshape the town's understanding of its own past. As Eli left Mrs. Cartwright's office that evening, he looked back at the old tree in the distance. Its branches swayed gently in the breeze, as if acknowledging the journey that had begun beneath its shade. He felt a mix of excitement, determination, and respect for the history that lay ahead. The town's past was no longer hidden. It was alive and waiting to be discovered, and Eli was ready to follow its trail wherever it might lead. The investigation had become a shared adventure, a bridge between generations and a reminder that history, when uncovered, could surprise, inspire, and bring people together in ways that no one could have imagined. To a neighbor in secret, leaving small gifts and notes of encouragement. Another spoke of a disagreement over land that had divided families but was never spoken of again. The letters were full of emotions: love, anger, regret, and hope, capturing the essence of human experience in a way that felt personal and immediate. The photographs added another layer to the story. Eli noticed subtle details: a building that no longer existed, a street corner that had changed, and even small objects that people carried or wore. Each photograph was a window into the lives of people who had lived long before him. The tree in some of the pictures looked smaller and younger, but its presence was unmistakable, a silent witness to all that had happened. Eli felt a strange connection to those who had come before him, a sense that the past and present were intertwined through this very tree and the hidden box. As the afternoon turned to evening, Eli and his friends carefully put everything back into the box. They decided to keep it safe while they figured out what to do next. The town's excitement had not faded. In fact, it had grown stronger. People discussed theories, made guesses, and shared memories of the past. The tree had become more than a landmark. It was a portal to history, a place where stories long forgotten were beginning to resurface. Eli knew that the discovery was only the beginning. The letters, photographs, and key were pieces of a puzzle that the town would need to solve together. He felt a sense of responsibility to preserve the box and its contents, to ensure that the history it held would not be lost again. The mystery had sparked curiosity, wonder, and a sense of community. It was remarkable how a simple hollow in an old tree could bring people together, connect generations, and remind everyone that the past still had a place in their lives. That night, Eli could hardly sleep. He thought about the names in the letters, the faces in the photographs, and the small key that promised more secrets waiting to be discovered. His mind raced with possibilities, imagining the hidden stories of courage, kindness, and conflict that had shaped the town in ways no one alive had known. He felt a deep sense of anticipation for what the next day might bring, knowing that the old tree, quiet and patient, had opened the door to a mystery that would change how the town saw itself forever. The adventure had begun, and Eli was determined to follow it wherever it led, ready to uncover the history that had been waiting, hidden in the heart of the tree, for decades. People had wanted to keep hidden. The key puzzled everyone, as it didn't match any locks they could think of. Even the letters, though partially unreadable, hinted at events and connections that had been forgotten with time. The townspeople were captivated, drawn into a story that had begun decades before any of them had been born. As the day went on, more people came to see the old tree and the mysterious box. Children who had always played nearby now peeked at it with wide eyes, imagining what kind of adventure Eli might have had to find it. The grown-ups whispered among themselves, sharing memories of old houses, relatives, and townsfolk who had long since passed away. The sense of connection to the past was tangible, and the tree, once just a familiar landmark, took on a new significance. It was no longer just a place for shade or play. It had become a keeper of secrets, a silent witness to history. Eli felt a mixture of pride and responsibility. He had stumbled upon something that mattered, not just to him but to the whole town. The thought that the box had been there for so long unnoticed made him reflect on how ordinary places could hide extraordinary stories. He realized that this was the beginning of a journey, one that might uncover parts of the town's history that no one had remembered. And he knew that every discovery would bring its own surprises, some comforting, others shocking, but all important. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the grass and river, Eli carefully placed the box back on the bench, making a mental note to return the next day with materials to examine the letters and photographs more closely. He walked home slowly, thinking about what he had found and the excitement it had sparked among the neighbors. The old tree stood quietly in the fading light, its branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. It seemed almost alive, as if it knew it had revealed something remarkable, something that would change the town forever. That night, Eli could barely sleep. His mind kept returning to the faces in the photographs, the words in the letters, and the mysterious key. He imagined the people who had hidden the box, wondering what they had wanted to protect and why it had been left behind for so long. He thought about the stories he would uncover and the way the town might react to the revelations. The adventure had only just begun, but already it felt monumental. The old oak tree, once just a silent observer of daily life, had become a gateway to a past that was waiting to be discovered, and Eli felt honored and humbled to be the one who had found it.